My father gave away my college fund to support his new family, saying, "You're on your own now, kiddo." Delivered a graduation speech that left his jaw dropped and everyone on their feet. The last thing my father said to me before walking out of my life was, "I'll always take care of you, princess." I was 16 then, naive enough to believe him, and stupid enough to think he meant it. My name is Reagan, and this is the story of how I learned that karma doesn't need your help. It just needs time. I remember that morning clearly. Mom was making pancakes, her specialty for Sunday breakfast. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and coffee, and Dad was supposedly running errands. His empty chair at our breakfast table should have been our first warning. "He's been gone a while," Mom said, trying to sound casual as she flipped another pancake. "Did he say where he was going?" I shrugged, scrolling through my phone. "Just errands, same as always." The doorbell rang at 10:47 a.m. I know because I checked my phone when I heard it, wondering if Dad had forgotten his keys again. Instead, there was a courier with an envelope. "Mrs. Lucas?" he asked, holding out his tablet for a signature. Mom wiped her hands on her apron and signed. I watched her open the envelope, saw her face drain of color, and watched as she slowly sank into Dad's empty chair. "Mom?" I put down my phone. "What's wrong?" She handed me the papers with trembling hands. Divorce papers. He'd served her divorce papers on a Sunday morning while we were making pancakes. "There has to be a mistake," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew there wasn't. The signs had been there. The late nights at work, the mysterious phone calls, the way he'd changed his phone's password. My phone buzzed with a text from him. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I'll explain everything soon." Soon turned out to be 3 days later in a coffee shop downtown. He brought her with him, Marissa, his secretary. She was barely 30, wearing a diamond ring that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. "Reagan, honey," he started, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled back. This isn't how I wanted things to go, but sometimes life takes unexpected turns. Unexpected turns? I laughed, but it sounded hollow. Like emptying my college fund? Was that an unexpected turn too? His face paled. "How did you mom check the accounts?" "Every penny, Dad. Gone." I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "What happened to 'I'll always take care of you'?" Marissa shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Bennett, maybe we should know." I cut her off. "Let him explain. I want to hear how he justifies stealing his daughter's future." "I didn't steal anything," he defended, his voice rising slightly. "That money was in my name. We needed it for our new start." "Your new start?" I repeated. "You mean your new house? Your new wife? Your new baby?" His head snapped up. "How did you Facebook isn't private, Dad?" "Congratulations, by the way. I hope it was worth it." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Several people turned to look, but I didn't care anymore. "Reagan, please." He reached for me again. "We can figure something out, maybe some student loans or community college first." "Don't bother," I said, gathering my things. "You've done enough." As I walked toward the door, I heard Marissa's voice. "She'll come around, Bennett. She just needs time." I stopped and turned back one last time. "You know what's funny, Dad? You always told me that actions have consequences. Guess we'll both find out if that's true." That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the acceptance letter for my dream university, the one I could no longer afford. Mom found me there, still staring at it hours later. "We'll figure something out," she said, squeezing my shoulder. "We always do." I looked up at her, seeing the strength in her eyes despite everything she'd been through. "Yes, we will, but not his way." I opened my laptop and started searching for scholarships, grants, part-time jobs, anything that could help. The acceptance letter sat beside me, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but as motivation for what I needed to achieve. My father thought he could break me by taking my future. Instead, he gave me something far more valuable, the determination to succeed without him. And succeed I would, not just for myself, but to show him exactly what he'd thrown away. I made myself a promise that night. I would graduate at the top of my class, and when I did, he'd realize exactly what his new start had cost him. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, and I was about to get so much better. "That's your third cup of coffee in 2 hours, Esther said, sliding into the booth across from me at the diner where I worked nights. "You're going to vibrate right out of your shoes." "Can't help it," I mumbled, shuffling through a stack of scholarship applications. "These are due by midnight, and I still have a shift to finish." The diner job was just one of 3. Mornings at the campus bookstore, afternoons tutoring high school students, and nights here serving endless cups of coffee to tired truckers and college students cramming for exams. Sleep had become a luxury I couldn't afford. "Let me help," Esther offered, reaching for half of my stack. We'd met during my first tutoring session. She was struggling with calculus, and I needed the money. Now she was my best friend and biggest cheerleader. "You don't have to shut up and let me help," she said, already starting to read. "Besides, your handwriting looks like a drunk spider dipped in ink." The bell above the door chimed, and I jumped up to serve the new customers. When I returned, Esther was frowning at her phone. "What's wrong?" She hesitated. "Your dad posted something about his new baby." My hand trembled slightly as I poured more coffee. "Let me guess, another perfect family photo? Reagan." "It's fine." I cut her off. "I'm too busy for his social media fairy tale anyway." But later that night, after my shift ended, I found myself scrolling through his profile. There they were, Bennett, Marissa, and baby Sadie, all smiling and matching Christmas sweaters. The caption read, "Nothing better than family time." I threw my phone across the room. The next morning, I dragged myself to the campus bookstore fighting exhaustion. My manager Mike took one look at me and shook his head. "You look like death warmed over, kid." "Thanks for the compliment," I muttered. "Stocking textbooks." "Take a break," he said. "There's something I want to show you." He led me to his office and pulled up the store's website. "We're starting a scholarship program for student employees. Full ride for one person. Applications open next week." My heart skipped a beat. "Full ride?" "Yep, and between us," he winked, "you're already at the top of my list. Just don't tell anyone I said that." For the first time in months, I felt hope flutter in my chest, but then I remembered all the other applications I'd submitted, all the rejection letters that followed. "Thanks, Mike," I said, trying not to let my voice crack. "I'll definitely apply." That afternoon, during a tutoring session, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I ignored it until the third call when I finally stepped out to answer. "Hello? Reagan? It's Dad." My throat tightened. "I'm working." "I know. I saw your scholarship applications at my company. I wanted to tell you you're on the selection committee." My voice rose. "Of course you are. I can help. Like you helped with my college fund?" The words came out sharp enough to cut. "No thanks. I'd rather fail on my own than succeed because of you." I hung up and leaned against the wall, breathing hard. When I returned to my student, she looked concerned. "Are you okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied. Now, about that quadratic formula. Later that night, I sat in my tiny studio apartment surrounded by bills and application forms. My laptop dinged with a new email notification. Subject, University Application Status Update. My hand shook as I clicked it open. The first line made my heart stop. "Congratulations. We are pleased to offer you admission." I read it 3 times before it sank in. I'd gotten in. To my dream school. The one I'd been working towards since before everything fell apart. Grabbing my phone, I called Mom first. I got in. I practically screamed when she answered. Her joy matched mine. "Oh, honey. I'm so proud of you." "I don't know how I'll afford it yet," I admitted, "but I'll figure it out. I have to." "You will," she said firmly. "You're stronger than anyone I know." After we hung up, I sat looking at the acceptance letter on my screen. The estimated cost made my stomach churn, but I refused to let fear win. I'd work harder, sleep less, do whatever it took. My phone buzzed with a text from Esther. "Check your email. Did you get in?" I smiled and typed back, "I did. Time to make the impossible possible." Because that's what this was. Impossible, but necessary. Like climbing a mountain with your hands tied behind your back. But I'd rather climb that mountain than take the easy road my father offered. Sometimes the hardest path is the one that leads you exactly where you need to go. Welcome to Thompson Hall. My new roommate, Malia, threw open the door with the enthusiasm of a game show host. Home sweet home for the next year. The dorm room was tiny with 2 narrow beds and desks crammed against opposite walls. But to me, it was paradise. Proof that I'd made it despite everything. "You don't have much stuff," Malia observed as I unpacked my single suitcase. "I travel light," I said, smoothing my second-hand bedspread. No need to mention that traveling light wasn't exactly a choice. "Well, you can borrow anything you need from me," she offered, gesturing to her overflowing closet. Over the next few weeks, I fell into a routine. Classes during the day, work-study job in the library at night, and weekends split between studying and my off-campus waitressing gig. Sleep became a distant memory, but my GPA stayed perfect. "You should join some clubs," Malia suggested one evening, watching me highlight textbooks. "All work and no play makes Reagan a dull girl." "Can't afford to be dull," I muttered. "I need to maintain my scholarship. At least come to the business leaders meeting tomorrow. Great networking opportunity." She wiggled her eyebrows. "Plus, there's free pizza." Free food was my weakness, so I agreed. That's where I met Elias. He was giving a presentation about internship opportunities when our eyes met across the room. Later, as I was reaching for a slice of pizza, he appeared beside me. "You're the one who actually took notes during my boring speech," he said, grinning. "It wasn't boring," I replied. though you might want to ease up on the corporate buzzwords. He laughed. Noted. I'm Elias, Reagan. We ended up talking long after the meeting ended, sitting on a bench outside the business building. He was smart, funny, and surprisingly easy to talk to. So, why business? He asked. I like knowing how things work, I said. Money, markets, people, it's all connected. And he raised an eyebrow. There's more to it than that. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A Facebook notification. Bennett Lucas has tagged you in a photo. My hand trembled as I opened it. There I was, maybe 5 years old, sitting on my dad's shoulders at a carnival. His caption, missing my firstborn today. Your Throwback Thursday family is everything. Are you okay? Elias asked. You look like you've seen a ghost. Just my father's latest attempt at public redemption, I said, showing him the post. The words spilled out before I could stop them about the divorce, the stolen college fund, the new family. What a dick, Elias said simply when I finished. I laughed despite myself. Yeah, pretty much. My dad's not winning any Father of the Year awards either, he offered. Left when I was 12. Sends a Christmas card sometimes if he remembers. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Two people who understood each other's wounds without needing more words. The next day, I overheard two students talking in the library while I was reshelving books. Did you hear about the new alumni scholarship program? Yeah. Full ride for students who demonstrate exceptional leadership and community impact. Good luck with that. I froze, a book halfway to the shelf. An idea started forming in my mind. Dangerous, ambitious, and exactly what I needed. That evening, I researched everything I could about starting scholarship funds. Between classes the next day, I drafted proposals and made lists of potential donors. You're plotting something, Malia said, watching me scribble in my notebook during lunch. I know that look. Maybe, I smiled, but not yet. It needs to be perfect. My phone buzzed again. Another notification from my father. This time, it was a photo of baby Sadie's first steps. The comments were full of congratulations and heart emojis. You don't have to look, Elias said, suddenly appearing behind me. He'd started sitting with us at lunch, becoming a regular part of our little group. I know. I closed the app. But sometimes I need the reminder. Reminder of what? Of why I'm doing this. All of it. I gestured to my notebooks full of plans. Success is the best revenge, right? Revenge is overrated, he said carefully, but success? That's forever. Later that night, as I was closing the library, I found a note slipped into my bag. It was from Elias. Whatever you're planning, I'm in. Just say the word. I smiled, tucking the note into my planner. The pieces were falling into place, slowly but surely. My father thought he could write me out of his story, replace me with his new perfect family. But I was writing my own story now, and it was going to be one hell of a plot twist. Reagan, wake up. I jerked awake, my face pressed against a textbook in the library. Elias stood over me, concern etched on his face. What time is it? I mumbled, wiping drool from my chin. 3 a.m. I was walking back from the computer lab when I saw the light on in here. He sat down across from me. This is the third time this week I've found you like this. I have a midterm tomorrow, I said, straightening my papers, and a presentation for business ethics and a double shift at the diner, and you're gonna crash and burn if you keep this up. He closed my textbook firmly. Come on, I'm walking you home. The October 0 air was crisp as we crossed the empty campus. My legs felt like lead, and even keeping my eyes open was a struggle. Talk to me, Elias said suddenly. Tell me something you've never told anyone else. Why? Because you're about to face plant into the sidewalk, and talking will keep you awake. I was too tired to argue. I have this recurring dream, I started. I'm back at my old house before everything fell apart. Dad's making his famous Sunday pancakes. My voice caught. I hadn't meant to talk about this, especially not with him. Go on, he encouraged softly. In the dream, I always try to warn him, tell him not to leave, not to throw everything away. But when I open my mouth, no sound comes out, and then I watch him walk away over and over. We reached my dorm, but neither of us moved to go inside. Want to know what I think? Elias asked. What? I think you're still trying to save him, but he's not the one who needs saving. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Your father called. Says he's coming to campus next week for some alumni event. Wanted you to know. The exhaustion vanished, replaced by a cold knot in my stomach. Bad news? Elias asked, watching my face. My father's coming here next week. My hands started shaking with his new family. Hey! Elias grabbed my shoulders gently. Look at me. You don't have to see him. Yes, I do, I whispered. Because if I hide, he wins, and I'm done letting him win. The next morning, I could barely focus in class. Professor Martinez had to call my name twice during our business ethics discussion. Miss Lucas, your thoughts on ethical leadership? Sorry. I straightened in my seat. I was just thinking about how ethics often conflict with personal gain and how leaders justify their choices. Interesting perspective. She nodded. Perhaps you could expand on that in your final paper. After class, Malia cornered me in the hallway. Okay. Spill. What's going on? You're acting weird. My father's coming to campus, I said, the words tasting bitter. For some alumni event next week? The fall alumni mixer? She pulled out her phone. Wait. I saw something about that. They're announcing new scholarship initiatives. My heart stopped. Of course, he would be there, probably presenting some generous donation, playing the role of successful businessman and philanthropist, the perfect image for his perfect new life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I found myself in the 24-hour campus coffee shop, staring at old family photos on my laptop. There was one from my 16th birthday, the last one before he left. We were both smiling at the camera, his arm around my shoulders. You look like him, a voice said. I slammed my laptop shut. Elias stood there with 2 coffee cups. Sorry, he said, sliding one toward me. Didn't mean to sneak up. I don't look like him, I said sharply. Then softer. Sorry, I'm just scared. Angry, I corrected. And tired. So damn tired. Of what? Of pretending I'm okay? Of working 3 jobs and maintaining perfect grades? Of watching him play happy families on Facebook while I gestured to my surroundings, the empty coffee shop, the stack of textbooks, the dark circles under my eyes. Elias was quiet for a moment. You know what's funny? He probably thinks he's hurting you by showing off his new life. But look at you. Top of our class, working your ass off, building something real. You're everything he's pretending to be. I looked up at him. Really looked at him for the first time that night. Why are you here, Elias? It's 4 a.m. He smiled slightly. Because sometimes people need someone to remind them how strong they are, even if it's at 4 a.m. in a coffee shop. The sun was starting to rise when we finally left, casting long shadows across the empty campus. In a week, my father would walk these same paths, showing off his new family. But this was my territory now, and I was done being the ghost in his perfect new life. The day of the alumni mixer arrived with a cruel twist of fate. My manager at the diner called at 6 a.m. Reagan, we're letting you go, she said without preamble. The owner's nephew needs a job and well, I sat on my bed, phone pressed to my ear as she rambled about budget cuts and family obligations. All I could think about was the rent due next week. Thanks for the opportunity, I said mechanically before hanging up. Malia found me still sitting there an hour later. Earth to Reagan. You're going to be late for what's wrong? Lost my job at the diner, I said, forcing myself to stand. But it's fine. I'll figure something out. It's not fine, she insisted. You need that money. What I need is to get through today without falling apart. I grabbed my blazer, the only one I owned, bought secondhand for interviews. The alumni mixer starts at noon. The business building was transformed when we arrived. Elegant buffet tables lined the walls and well-dressed alumni mingled with nervous students. I scanned the room, my heart pounding. There, Malia whispered, nudging me. By the podium, my father stood in an expensive suit, Marissa beside him in a designer dress. Baby Sadie, now a toddler, clung to his leg. They looked like a magazine advertisement for perfect families. Reagan, Professor Martinez appeared suddenly. I'm so glad you came. There's someone I'd like you to meet. She started leading me toward the podium, toward them. Professor, I. Bennett, she called out. This is Reagan, one of our top students. She's actually working on a fascinating proposal about ethical leadership. My father turned, and our eyes met for the first time in years. He paled slightly. Reagan, he said softly. You look you've grown up. That tends to happen, I replied coldly. Time passes, children grow, trust funds disappear. Professor Martinez's smile faltered. Marissa shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps this isn't the best time, my father started. But little Sadie chose that moment to look up at me with curious eyes. Who's that, Daddy? The question hung in the air like smoke. I watched him struggle, saw the moment he chose cowardice again. Just one of our students, sweetheart. Something inside me snapped. Actually, I said loud enough for nearby groups to hear, I'm your sister, the one Daddy doesn't talk about. The silence that followed was deafening. Marissa quickly scooped up Sadie, whispering about finding the bathroom. Reagan, please, my father hissed. This isn't the place. When is the place? I demanded. When you're posting fake family photos on Facebook? Or when you're announcing scholarships to prove what a generous man you are? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You traded your first family for a newer model. But here's what you don't understand. I'm not just surviving without you. I'm thriving. Professor Martinez touched my arm gently. Reagan, perhaps we should step outside. No need, I said, straightening my second-hand blazer. I have a class to prepare for. Unlike some people, I actually earn what I have. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. I can help you, he said quietly. I know you lost your job. I still have connections. I spun back. How did you know about my job? He looked away. I keep tabs on you. Tabs? I laughed bitterly. You spy on me, but you can't claim me as your daughter. That's rich, even for you. Elias appeared at my side as if summoned by my distress. Everything okay here? Perfect, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. I was just leaving. As we walked away, I heard my father call after me. Reagan, wait. But I kept walking. Out of the building, across the quad, until my legs gave out near the library steps. Elias sat beside me without a word. I had this whole plan, I said finally, to show him how well I was doing, to prove him wrong. Instead, I lost my job and made a scene at a university event. You didn't make a scene, Elias argued. You stood up for yourself. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. The numbers stared back at me, mocking my independence. I can't afford to lose that job, I whispered. Elias was quiet for a moment. Then, remember that scholarship initiative you were researching? I looked up at him. What about it? Maybe it's time to stop planning and start doing. Turn this setback into something bigger. For the first time that day, I felt a spark of hope. You really think we could? He grinned. I think you could do anything, especially if it involves proving someone wrong. I stood up, brushing off my blazer. My father might have won today's battle, but the war wasn't over, not even close. The Resilient Scholarship Fund, I announced, standing in Professor Martinez's office, for students who've lost financial support due to family abandonment. She leaned forward, intrigued. Go on. I've already spoken with 10 other students in similar situations, I continued, sliding her my proposal. We've secured preliminary pledges from 3 local businesses, and Elias's father's law firm is willing to handle the legal paperwork pro bono. To spite his own father, Elias added from his seat beside me, which makes it even better. Professor Martinez flipped through the pages, her expression thoughtful. This starting a scholarship fund isn't easy. You'll need a substantial banking. That's why we're here, I said. We need a faculty as a board to present this to the board. She studied in me. Didn't have anything to do with your father's appearance as it makes her last a month. It has everything to do with it, I admitted, but not in the way you think. This isn't about revenge. It's about making sure no other student has to choose between their education and their dignity. She nodded slowly. The board meets next week. I'll present it myself. Walking out of her office, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Elias bumped my shoulder playfully. See? Told you she'd help. We're not there yet, I reminded him. The board still has to. Reagan. Malia came running across the quad. Check your email, now. I pulled out my phone, confused. The newest email made my heart stop. Congratulations. Based on your outstanding academic performance, you have been selected as this year's valedictorian. Holy shit, Elias breathed, reading over my shoulder. This changes everything, I whispered. The scholarship announcement, we can do it at graduation. In front of everyone, Malia grinned. Including your father. Will he even come? Elias asked carefully. Oh, he'll come, I said. He won't be able to resist showing off his perfect family at his alma mater's graduation ceremony. The next week passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. The board approved our scholarship proposal with unprecedented enthusiasm, especially after learning about my valedictorian status. Your speech, Professor Martinez said during our planning session. It needs to be powerful, but professional. No direct accusations. I know, I assured her. Trust me, I've been planning this for longer than you think. That night, working on my speech in the library, I got an unexpected text from Marissa. Can we meet, please? It's important. I stared at my phone for a long time before responding. Tomorrow, campus coffee shop, 2 p.m. She was already there when I arrived, nervously stirring a latte. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I know you probably hate me. I don't hate you, I interrupted. I nothing you. There's a difference. She flinched. Fair enough. Look, your father, he doesn't know I'm here, but he's been different since the mixer. Distant, sad, guilty, you mean? I corrected. And that's not my problem. He wants to make things right. By what? Throwing money at me now? I stood up. Tell him to save it for his next family. Reagan, wait. She grabbed my arm. He's coming to graduation. He wants to support you. I pulled away. He's coming to maintain his image, but don't worry. I'll give him a speech he'll never forget. The next few weeks flew by. My speech went through countless revisions, each word carefully chosen for maximum impact. Elias and Malia helped me practice until I could deliver it in my sleep. The day before graduation, I received another text. this time from my father. Proud of you, princess. Can't wait for tomorrow. I showed it to Elias during our final rehearsal. You okay? He asked. You know what's funny? I said, staring at the message. A year ago, those words would have meant everything to me. Now they just feel empty. Maybe because you don't need his validation anymore. I looked up at him, this friend who'd become so much more over the past year. When did you get so wise? He grinned. Probably around the same time you got so strong. That night, I stood in front of my mirror practicing one last time. My graduation robe hung on the door waiting for tomorrow. My phone buzzed with messages from Mom, from Esther, from countless well-wishers. But all I could think about was the moment I'd step up to that podium tomorrow, the moment I'd look out at the crowd and see my father's face, the moment he'd realize that his biggest mistake wasn't leaving us. It was underestimating me. Because tomorrow wasn't just about graduation, it was about transformation, and I was ready to spread my wings and soar. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as I stood backstage, adjusting my cap for the 100th time. Through the curtain, I could see the crowd filing in. Proud parents, excited siblings, beaming grandparents. They're here, Malia whispered, peeking through the gap. Third row, right side. I didn't need to look to know who she meant. I could feel my father's presence like a weight in the room. You've got this. Elias appeared beside me, already in his graduation robe. Just breathe. Ladies and gentlemen, the dean's voice boomed through the speakers. Please welcome this year's graduating class. We marched into pomp and circumstance, a sea of black robes and nervous smiles. As I crossed the stage to take my place at the front, I caught a glimpse of them. My father in an expensive suit, Marissa holding Sadie on her lap. Mom sat on the opposite side of the auditorium, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. The dean's speech passed in a blur. Then, and now it gives me great pleasure to introduce this year's valedictorian, a student who has maintained perfect grades while working multiple jobs, and who has already made significant contributions to our university community, Reagan Lucas. The applause thundered as I approached the podium. My hands trembled slightly as I arranged my notes, but my voice was steady when I began. 4 years ago, I learned a valuable lesson about family. I started, my eyes scanning the crowd. I learned that sometimes, the people who should support you the most are the ones who let you down the hardest. The room grew quiet. In the third row, my father shifted uncomfortably. I stood in my kitchen one Sunday morning watching my college fund disappear along with my dreams of higher education. But that moment taught me something crucial. Our greatest setbacks can become our strongest motivations. I paused, letting the words sink in. To my fellow graduates, we all have our stories of struggle. Some of us worked 3 jobs while studying. Some of us missed sleep, missed parties, missed the typical college experience because we were too busy surviving. But we're here. We made it. Heads nodded throughout the audience. I saw